Great.
Okay, good. How's your year been?
Awesome. Fine year.
Last year or the last 2 weeks?
This year. It's all good.
All right, that's good. I made notes. I guess that's a normal thing to do. Last few speeches I gave, I didn't do notes, but my notes are more than notes today, and I'll explain that in just a second. I'm hoping that this class is what you expected from the write-up, okay? So the write-up was cool, I liked it, I didn't write it, and I thought, that is perfect. You know, Cindy and Sarah, they wanted me to do something, and so hopefully this fits their vision. What I'm really going to try to do is to help you to do what the write-up said that this class is going to be, because you are your number one resource, okay? You are your number one resource. I love books. I love books that teach things. Books that teach morals. Books that help us to bring out the best from within ourselves. Okay? How many of you have read Hatchet by Gary Paulson? Okay? Good. Quite a few of you have. So there's this boy, and he goes down in a plane. He's in the Canadian wilderness. He ends up in a survival situation. He doesn't know what to do. He's just a teenager, but he had a hatchet on his hip that he was embarrassed about wearing, but he wore it because his mom gave it to him as a gift when he got on the airplane. So he ends up, that's all he has when he gets there. And he remembered something his teacher said. And his teacher had taught him, you are your number one resource. And he was able to survive this bad experience of a plane crash, and then he was in the wilderness for months, and he was able to figure out food, water, warmth, so that he could stay alive, because he remembered he was his number one resource. Okay? So enough of that book. On our farms, do we ever have problems that are hard to solve?
Yes.
Raise your hand if you have had a problem in your agricultural experience that was hard to solve. I want to see hands.
According to my Instagram, no, I've never had a problem.
Okay. We all have problems in life. If we want to do something good, you're going to run into problems, okay? Well, how many of you have ever wanted to give up? Let's see the hands. You hit tough times. You hit a roadblock. You hit a wall. You're like, this is over. This is done. It's ended. It's finished because this is too big of a problem. I can't get past it. Does that happen? It happens to all of us in life. That's called life, right? Well, what I'm going to talk about today is how to pull things out from ourselves, to make sure we're doing the right things. Maybe to ask if we're doing it at the right time. Are we really doing what we set out to do, or has it morphed into something that other people want us to do? And so these are some serious questions we need to ask ourselves. Does this sound like fixing a farm machine with baling wire? Because it is very, very similar to that. Because sometimes at the end of a day or a week or a year, we're thinking, I am a broken farm machine, or I am a failed crop, or I am an irrigation ditch that is so full of debris and weeds that the water won't flow down. Has anybody ever felt that way? I think we all have at times with different things in our life. So a quick story here. So I went to school, because everybody does that, right? And the teacher said, okay, make notes. And then when you get in high school, they start teaching you how to make notes so it makes sense. How many of you think the way your teachers did? Anybody? I see some heads going like this, and I see a couple of people going. I'm scary up here, right? I did not think the way my teachers did. When I got to college, a teacher said, you know, your freshman year, they're teaching you how to actually get through college. Here's how you do it. And it was pretty similar to what I learned in high school. You make these bullet points and you write them out so that you know what's going on, okay? So I did that, but I always struggled through school. My brain was not wired the way that teachers were wired. I had 2 or 3 teachers that were rebels, and those people changed my life and kept me, you know, in school and all that kind of stuff. So thank goodness for the rebels in the world, right? And that's kind of who we are. Here we are, and I think we kind of can, you know, we can believe in that kind of thing. My wife was taking statistics. She's a 30-year student. She's a 30-year senior. Is that what it is? Yeah, she'll graduate next year. Good for her. It's awesome. So last year she's taken a statistics class. But see, she hasn't had a math class for 27 years. But she had to pass this statistics class. She goes, I need help. And the people she was getting help from the college said, oh, good luck with, yeah, you haven't had a math class for that long, good luck with that. I got on YouTube to try to figure out how to help her. And I found this YouTube for people going to college. Are you struggling with your classes? You may have learned to take notes wrong. I thought, well, no, I had good notes. They taught me how to make notes. It was good. They said, do you make notes like this, bullet points with lines? And I'm all, yeah, that's how they taught me. It was great. And keep it all organized. Did you struggle in school because you took notes this way? Oh, I struggled in school. I don't know, but I took good notes. Where is this going? I was about to turn it off. And then they showed a picture that looked like this. Does that look like a mess? Who thinks that's a mess? Well, we have a guy here. Anybody else? Who thinks that looks great? Who can follow these notes? Okay, I have more hands coming up. You are rebel farmers in here. Are you a broken farm machine? You know? The YouTube went on, and it said, and they're, you know, the guy's writing his thing on the YouTube, and it looked like this. Have you ever made notes like this? Because if your brain is wired to have bullet points and nice and straight, you'll probably think like your teachers and you'll do good in your schooling. But if you're wired differently, you need this type of note taking, and there's a name for it. I don't even know what it is, but it's probably on a bullet point. Maybe we're thinking wrong in our farms. Are we simply thinking a way that somebody else said to do something? And so we're trying to create an outcome? Or are we focused on results? How many of you are focused on results on your farm? Results are good? Okay, results are good, right? Can we all agree that results are good? Can we all agree that results can come from a lot of ways of thinking? Absolutely. Are people sometimes focused on principles? Who's focused on principles on their farm? Okay, this is interesting. I'm seeing the same people raise their hands. Quite a few of the same people said those two things. Are those opposed? Are results and principles opposed?
No.
No.
No, alignment.
They're in alignment. Okay. What if you are focused on results at all costs? What happens to the principles?
Gotta go down.
So they have to work together, right? Absolutely. The year 2020, who had a tough year? I want you to be totally honest with the next question. Who had the best year of their life in 2020?
Pretty darn close.
Okay, do that again. I didn't expect that many hands. The best year of your life in 2020. Get your hands up. I'm going to take a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and a half. Was your hand up? 13, I'm gonna raise my hand. I wasn't gonna tell you this, but the year 2020 was the best year of my life. Why? Why was it a good year? I'll tell you why it was a good year for me. Because everything that I have done in my life, everything, the good times, the bad times, the educations, getting fired from jobs, getting flat tires on the side of the road. I don't know if that helped me. But there were a lot of things that have happened to me in my life that I was able to utilize and put to work. It all came to a crisis in society, and I was able to actually, instead of dreaming of living my purpose and my mission, I lived it last year. And that was awesome. And I don't know why you guys had a great year, but mostly what I have heard is how a hard year it has been for people. I'm an introvert. I'm like to be alone. I love working alone. I just built this giant greenhouse this year, 130 feet long. We dug it way in the ground like a wallopini. We stacked up all these boulders on the north side, 10 foot tall, to catch the thermal mass. And I had a backhoe and a bulldozer, and people left me alone. It was awesome, and now we're growing food out of there. But everything that I have learned in the past came into play to make that project happen. And it was awesome. And there's people who are benefiting now because of what I was able to create. And so all of those things came together. A few months before I started that project, you could have said I had some of the worst months of my life. I didn't have a full year that was the worst year of my life, but I had some pretty serious lows. I was thinking, why? Why have I made the decisions that I've made in my life that brought me to this point? And I had feelings of, I'm not valued in the world, which was a lie, but I felt that way in the moment. I had feelings of, I am an old, worn-out farm machine that's just going to be left in a field to rust. I'm the irrigation ditch that is just filled up with weeds, and nobody's ever going to clean it because we don't need irrigation water anymore in the world we live in. And I could go on and on with the analogy, but sometimes there are things that are broken in our lives, and literally on our farms. How do we pick things up? How do we get a roll of duct tape and fix that? How do we get a roll of baling wire and fix it? You know, the old jokes, you can fix anything with baling wire and duct tape. Farmers joke about that all the time. That's true when you see their vehicles. Okay, if you're going to do something in your enterprise, does anybody do anything besides agriculture that's here today? Okay, cool. I think these principles, these are human principles. Okay? These things apply to our life, not just to farming. This applies to everything in our lives. When you decide to do something, I want you to run it through what I call a diagnostic. Okay? I want you to do a diagnostic. Diagnose if it's going to be a good decision to make. Because so many times our customers or our peers or pressure from somewhere else will tell us a big list of really good things that we could be doing. And sometimes it spreads us too thin. It gets us off course because we agree with it. It sounds good. It sounds great. But if we had a tool, if we had a diagnostic to run it through, then it would help us make those decisions. Here's a diagnostic I've learned in the last few years that's pretty good. Do you have the time, the energy, and the resources to do that. Okay? It may fit in with your operation really good, but do you have the time, the energy, and the resources? That's your diagnostic. Okay, here's this great idea. Boy, that'd really be neat. Do you really have time? We're all busy. If we're involved in agriculture, we are busy. So do you have time? Do you have the resources? That could be a lot of things. What are our resources? What do you first think of when we ask that question, resources? Money. We think of money, okay? I want to expand that a little bit. What about our mental, spiritual, physical, social, material, and economic? That's all resources. Do we have the mental capacity to be able to do something when we're already so busy, focused on what we're doing? So that's a good one. Okay? Think about that. What about our energy levels? Who here has ran out of energy? You're doing the right thing. People are counting on you to fulfill whatever you promised them. And there's this other little tiny thing you could add in to make it so much more better. A little bit more effort will make it blossom so much greater. But do you have the energy to do that? I've seen a lot of burnout in people in agriculture because they simply did not have the energy. They didn't have this diagnostic. They didn't have the tool, and they didn't know how to ask that question. Do I really have time, energy, and resources? And then they didn't always understand exactly what those things meant. All of those can really fit into those things, other things I mentioned. The mental, physical, spiritual, social, material, those things are important. And of course, economic. I think economics is the one we know, we understand, we talk about all the time. Oh, I don't have enough money. If I had $10 million, it'd solve all my problems. Right? You ever hear that? I have helped build, I do consulting in agriculture. Go to people's farms, I stay there for a while, I help them do things, and then I move on because I don't know why. But that's what has happened to me. And when I go to somebody's farm, sometimes they have very little, and I help them, and we accomplish goals. And I have gone to 2 farms in my lifetime, in my career, and they had all the money you could imagine. And we went there, we put together a project, and throwing money at it was not the answer. Interesting thing, quite a few of the farms who had very little, those people are still doing it. They're in business. The people who had all the money, they're not in business. They're not doing it. You know, to take from that what you will, but throwing money at things doesn't fix it all the time. Anything you want me to clarify? Okay. I believe that we all have the power within us to create whatever it is we want. And I also believe that when we get excited about an idea and we're having the feelings of, ooh, wouldn't this be neat? And we're being drawn to something, then it's kind of the right thing for us to be doing. The reason we have those feelings is because there's like a 90% chance that we should be going in that direction. Okay? So let's just talk about skills and knowledge for a minute. Do we have the skills to do the thing that we want to do, that we're being drawn to? Skills.
You can look them up on YouTube if you don't have it.
Who believes that that's authentic? Looking stuff up on YouTube, some people are like this. Don't be scared of me. How many of you can get your PhD on YouTube? I was talking to a guy and he said, I was talking to him just about random whatever, and he was hiring people to do jobs. And I said, Mike, I said, man, sounds like you need a PhD to do this. He got worried. Do you have a PhD? I said, no. He said, okay, good, we can keep talking. If you had a PhD, I can't teach you anything because I've never met one person with that. Oh, wasn't that interesting? We think all this education is a good thing, yet in the real world, sometimes people won't hire you if you're too educated. You're too proud or whatever. I don't know, but that was an interesting thing. And here's a guy with real life experience who deals with people all the time. But YouTube is absolutely a fantastic place as long as you don't waste your life watching random stuff. Mm-hmm. But there are some great people out there. And when I say, my daughter calls me a boomer. I don't know what that means, but it means that I don't know anything about tech stuff. And when I say YouTube, I mean the internet. But you can learn all kinds of things online. And it's very, very good stuff if you find the people who know what they're talking about. Okay? So find people who are credible, people who actually have a track record, who have results, and and you can learn tons of stuff. Very, very, very valuable. So if you don't have a skill, can you legitimately learn a skill on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. I've learned a lot of things. It's very good. In fact, I've put stuff on YouTube so people can watch it and learn things. What about knowledge? Do we have the knowledge that we need to be able to do things? How many of you are in a project right now and you're struggling to have the knowledge you need? You simply don't know how. Okay, I'm seeing quite a few hands. Okay. How are you going to get the knowledge? Do you know? For those of you who raised your hand, do you know what to do to get the knowledge, or are you stuck? Who's stuck? Let's see big hands. I have a project right now. I'm stuck in a project. Who's stuck? Nobody? So you know where to get the knowledge. That's good. Where do you get the knowledge? How do you find answers?
People who know it. Talk to someone who already knows.
Yeah, mentors. People who know, people who've done it. We come to conferences like this, right? We get to know people. What about experiments? What if you're talking to people, because agriculture is tricky. I can be farming on this side of town, my friend is farming on that side of town, in the same valley in the Rocky Mountains. We have two different climates. Microclimates within our region. The climate's supposed to be the same, right? According to the Weather Channel, it's all the same climate, but it's not in reality. Microclimates make a big difference. Are we learning from experiments? Are we running experiments? Are we doing side-by-side trials of things? That can be a very, very valuable thing. Not only for you, but for your kids, for your neighbors, for generations to come. What about taking notes and documenting the things we're doing? I have a gardening friend who took notes for 60 years in her garden. She had 60 years of journals of temperatures, how the garden did every year. It was just a hobby, just what she did. Her husband was a wheat farmer, and she would raise fruit trees and a big vegetable garden every year. 60 years of knowledge. Can you imagine that? Well, I'll just remember what happened last year. How does that work for 60 years? That is so valuable for the people in her community. And we could be that for somebody else. What can you do? How many of you wake up in the morning, stand in front of the mirror and say, what can you do today? Has anybody ever talked to yourself in the mirror?
Yeah.
You probably can picture me standing there, grabbing some cookie in the mirror. What is wrong with you? Do I do that?
Yes, he does.
No, it's good though. Why not have a conversation with yourself? because it's weird, it shows insanity. Who said that? There's nothing insane about that. I think the smartest people in the world actually figure themselves out a tiny bit. I think we're so complex from a psychology point of view, we never understand ourselves. Read a book, back to books for a minute. There's a book called 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson. Great book. He's a psychologist guy, and he liberated me so much in one aspect of my life because he said, you are so complex, it is impossible for you to ever understand yourself. That was such a paradigm shift for me. That liberated me and let me just go out and do things. Because before that, I kept thinking, man, if I could just figure myself out, if I could understand what was going on, and why I do things, and why this, and why that, it would fix all my problems. I spent a lot of decades of my life wasting time where I could have been feeding a hungry person, solving a problem, and the list goes on and on, of those types of things I could have been doing if I would have just went and done it, instead of trying to answer the questions. And don't answer the question. We have gifts. We have talents. We have opportunities. Let's just go do it. But we have to fit into a mold that society puts us in. We have to figure it out. We have to write a business plan. Okay. And at times those things can be very appropriate. But at other times they hold us back so much. You know what the year 2020 taught me? It taught me that there are opportunities. We're past that year and the problems are all over. The world is rosy and beautiful. It's an era of good feeling. Right? Good, I'm glad somebody finally laughed. This whole thing was a stand-up comedian, man. Do we have opportunity today? Is there opportunity for a person who is excited about producing something as basic as food, for their neighbor, for their friend? Do you guys know Acres USA? They're a group kind of like this group, but they're nationwide, worldwide. They had a conference this year. It was virtual, like a month ago or something. Well, I was part of that, and I sat there on my computer in my house, and I watched all their speeches and all that. They had breakout sessions, and they would just randomly assign people to groups. There was just a person on a computer, and suddenly there'd be a group of 10 people. Somebody from the outskirts of Chicago told such an inspirational story. And when this whole COVID thing hit, there were people who were quarantined in Chicago. They couldn't leave their house. They'd get tickets. Policemen would make them go back in their house. And then there were problems, normal problems that happen in, with your house. But there were sections of town where the water went out. The electricity was off. And all of these things. Well, this farmer who was telling this story, he would take his stuff to the local farmer market. He'd been doing it for years. And so he'd take all his food there, he'd set up, and he had about 50 people who were regular customers. He knew them by name. And then there were all the other people who would go through a farmer's market that he'd sell stuff to. But he had his regulars. And they had like a little Facebook group or something where they would communicate all the time. And he'd tell them what he was bringing to the farmer's market. So that's kind of how he did his marketing. But he said all that stopped because there was no more, it's winter, but they still would do markets because they have to bake bread and stuff like that. And so all that's done. It's shut down. And he said, I was on my group on the computer, and these people, some of them didn't have water to drink. Some of them they had no food because they were very health conscious and they just wanted to eat fresh all the time. And they had greenhouses and stuff, so they were producing a lot of fresh things all year round. And he thought, man, this is a problem. And his kids, who had grown up on the farm, well, they went away and got corporate jobs. They didn't have jobs. A couple of them couldn't pay rent. And so they're like, what do we do? And so they moved back home into his basement. And he thought, like, this is not a pandemic that's like ruining the world. This is a great opportunity. He had this group of people, and he said, I'm going to stop farming. My kids know how to do it. You go raise all this food, because these people need it now worse than ever. I'm going to get in my van and we're taking food to all their houses. And guess what he put? And so they never did a CSA basket, but that's just what he did. He had boxes, and he's just loading up these boxes. And he took the boxes to all those 50 people. So suddenly it turned into a CSA like that. And when they'd get to the door, they'd just hand them cash and whatever. And then after a couple of weeks of this, oh, I was in the middle of the story. He added in bottled water. He went to the big box store, bought all these cases of bottled water. Whoever thought you would put bottled water in a CSA basket? That was a new concept for me. But suddenly, worse than ever, people needed water. I mean, we're thinking, how organic can I get? How fresh can I make it? That's been our mindset of the past. And now it's, well, we're going to put water in there. So this was like, it was making me cry when I heard his this testimony that he was telling. And then he did this for about 3 weeks. Then he thought, what about all the other vendors that I've become really good friends with at the farmer's market? And so he got on the phone. Hey, how are you guys doing? I mean, and some of them had done sort of similar things. They were able to get some food to some people. And then a whole nother level opened up, and he said, well, I don't have this and this and this and this in fruits and vegetables, and you do. Can I come buy it from you and take it to my people? They said, you're taking it to your people? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what about my people? Instead of delivering to 50, he's driving all week long, delivering to a couple of hundred people now. And he's picking up food from all these other farmers in the area. And he's driving into Chicago, feeding people. Why did he do that? Because it was a great business venture?
Is it need?
Because somebody was hungry, somebody was hurting, somebody was in pain, and he could feed, heal, and bless those people's lives. That's why many of us have spent our lives learning and growing and failing and falling down and becoming broken pieces of farm machinery so that we can put baling wire around our foot and fix ourselves. We might look like the old broken down truck, right? With this duct taped together. But now is the time of opportunity. We can so bless the lives of people. What if they don't need food and we're farmers? Can we still help them? How many of you have a unique gift? Raise your hand, I want to see it. A unique personal gift. This, I'm getting really vulnerable here, making you raise your hand. But I'm here to tell you, you all have a unique personal gift. You have a genius within you. And we need that in the world today, worse than ever. And it might be the hardest thing to find if you haven't found it yet. And that's okay. But how many of you know a person that needs to be loved? Come on, I'm going to make you raise your hand. And if you don't know a person to be loved, you don't have to raise your hand. But I'm pretty sure that we can all find somebody to love. Find that person. Use your unique skills, your unique talents, your unique gifts to be able to love that person. Does this sound like a food and farm conference? Am I up here telling you how to grow carrots, or how much money you're going to make raising alfalfa, or how much money you're going to spend, how much, spend or lose, how many checks you're going to sign on the front, doing it the old way? Did that make sense? We like to sign checks on the back, not the front, right? I got that from Gabe Brown. You know who he is? He's a pretty good speaker. But I thought that was clever. You know, why are we farming if we're signing the front of checks all the time and we're going in the hall? Okay, we got 25 minutes left. I want to solve some problems in here using this diagnostic. Who has a farm problem right now on your farm that you are struggling with? that you're willing to tell us about?
I have a question, or kind of like, so I want to do berries, but my soil's not super awesome, and I don't have a lot of time to get it into shape.
Okay, thank you. She wants to do berries. Her soil is not awesome. She wants to get it into shape. We have a room full of people here. How many of us have raised berries? Think about it. How many of us have improved soil? There's a lot of hands going up. You have a lot of people to help you. First of all, I have to do this really nicely, Kate, but first of all, I kind of have to put you on the spot a little bit
Okay.
with the diagnostic. Okay? You said you want to do berries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have time
Yeah,
to do it? Do you have the resources?
I do.
Okay. Do you have the energy?
Heck yeah.
That part of the diagnostic is done. Let's. All right. Okay. Okay. So this sounds like she's doing the right thing. Okay.
I've done other stuff before, I just want to switch, I want to try something different.
Oh, good. Cool. Okay. Do you have the skills?
Some.
Yeah.
But I mean, I haven't done a lot of berries. I've done some berries, but not tons.
Okay.
And
Do you have?
the deer have eaten most of what I've done.
Do you know how to build a fence?
Well, I do.
I'm kind of jumping ahead,
There
but
you go.
okay.
I might have to.
Do you have the knowledge about berries?
Not a ton.
Okay. Have you ever experimented with growing something and improving soil?
Yeah, a little bit, but I'm not to the scale of some people, that's for sure.
Okay, we're going to keep going, but are you seeing how to do this? This is for you, but it's for you. It's for all of us. All right? Do you know your personal gifts?
I'm optimistic. I'm a hard worker.
That's good.
And I
Okay.
do have-
And you don't have to tell us, but do you know your personal gifts? Think about that.
Some, but probably not all.
Okay, start writing those things down. Do you know your talents? And do you know the difference between gifts and talents? Okay, there could be a million people explain this differently, but it has helped me in my life to understand that a gift is something you're basically born with and you grow up like Mozart. He wrote his first symphony at 3 or 5 or some crazy thing. That was a gift. Simply gifted. You grow up and you're gifted and you didn't have to work super hard to understand and to do something. Okay, that's a gift. A talent is something you want to do and you work really hard at it to become really good. Okay? Like Beethoven. He would practice a lot to be the great musician he became. Okay? So a gift is something you're born with. A talent is something you desire and you work hard to perfect that. Okay? So they can be very closely related, but it's helped me to understand that little bit of difference. What about opportunity? Is there opportunity in berries?
I think so.
Okay?
I mean, people are looking for a place to go, you can go to the U-Pick thing or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I have a big enough space.
Okay, awesome. What about your practice? What does that mean? Does a doctor go into big business or does he go into practice? He has his skills, he has his knowledge, he has his training, he's developed talents, he may have some gifts in that area, and then he goes into practice. I have a brother-in-law who went to medical school, and I've known other doctors I've talked to, and in medical school they teach them, what we are teaching you now is as good as we know, but it is not true. They teach doctors that in medical school, okay? This is the best we know. And it is your job, when you go into practice medicine and become better. And when you learn something and have a breakthrough, tell us. So we can do more research and we can all learn and become better. That's practice. Is that applicable in farming?
Mm-hmm.
Is that applicable in berries?
Mm-hmm.
We are practicing. Okay? What about records? Are we keeping records? Like through 60-year records of this gardener friend I have? Okay? Keep those records. Have you kept records in the past of soil improvement that you've done?
No.
Have you kept records of, is this getting too personal?
No.
Good. Have You kept records of berries you've had in the past?
No. I
Have
mean,
you-
I kind of know my mind, but yeah, not written down, no.
Have you eaten a berry? Okay, that was a stupid question, but how did it taste?
Depends where it came from. Some are terrible.
You have records in your mind
Yeah.
of the berries you want to grow, and you're growing them. Why?
Because I want to have people come to my place and have a good experience, but yet I want to make some money. I'm tired of doing stuff just for good feelings, if that makes sense.
Good, good.
Even though that's a good thing, it's okay to make a little bit too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to, it has to pay, right? See how this diagnostic's working? Okay, is this making sense to everybody? All right. The last thing on here is attitude. What about our attitudes? How's our attitude? Well, I'll go ahead and plant. It's not going to do any good. Cool. It's not going to rain. I guess I'll cut the hay. It's been a drought, so if I cut the hay, at least we'll get some rain. You ever heard that? At least it'll rain. So, how's our attitude with all this, right? And knowing our why, which we heard this morning, is perfect. We need to know that. We need to know our why. Okay, so who can help with berries? Okay, what do we need to know? What's the first thing we need to know? This is real. This is not on my notes. We're going to help you. What's your first name?
Amy.
Amy. We're going to help Amy get her berries going, okay? Who has grown berries? Do we have a berry expert in here? Well, okay, forget expert. Who has grown berries and they tasted good when you ate them? Who has sold berries that you grew? Okay, good. We have people in here. Who has improved soil and your plants did better after you improved it? Okay, awesome. Let's start with berry varieties. What varieties you're planning to get?
Well, I have written down some notes. There's a golden berry called an Ann
Okay.
that I was told is really,
Raspberry?
yeah.
Okay.
And,
Somebody told you it was a good one?
well, I was consulting, and then a Joan Jay.
Okay. Is that a raspberry? I don't
It
recognize
is.
that one. Okay.
It's more of a darker one.
Okay, a purple or a black?
The darker.
It's a red.
Is it a red?
Darker red.
A dark red?
And then maybe like a triple crown.
Okay, that's a blackberry. A thornless blackberry, right? And they big and long, kind of like that?
They're big.
Like oblong and big? And they're juicy? Okay. Has anybody ever eaten triple crown berries? Okay. Are they a good one to grow?
Yes.
What climate are you in? Like, where are you from?
Here.
Cedar City area, Iron County? Okay. Has anybody ever improved soil in Iron County for berries? No? Okay. I'm going to give you some advice, but I'm giving everybody here this advice. Find an old-time gardener in your area who has grown like successfully things for a long time, like my friend who had 60 years of notes. Find that person to mentor you. Okay? Where's a good place to find those people? Where do you find old gardeners in the community? Where do you go to find them? In a garden, but what if they're not in their garden? Like a community thing you would go to. Say that louder. Farmer's market, that's a good one. The state fair, okay.
Master Gardener Program.
Master Gardener Program.
Neighbors Aunt Sally, I don't know.
Word of mouth type thing. Okay, there's one more that's a huge one that I hardly ever hear, and it almost sounds out of context. Did you just say it?
Church.
Church, who said that? If you go to church, any church, I don't care what denomination, you go to church, who's there? What age group of people are at church? There's a lot of old people there, and a lot of older people garden, and religious old people sometimes garden with religious fervor, and they know what they're talking about the garden. this isn't a religion class, but if you want to learn gardening, go to church, get to know the congregation, and start talking gardening. Because if you go to their church, then they want to usually like be friends with you. Because you're there, you're a new face, and that's what people do. Usually when you go to church, they're like, oh, you're new here, blah, blah, blah. You know, and they make friends with you. And then you say, I'm really interested in gardening in this area. I don't care if you're an expert gardener. If you do this, you will learn more about gardening by doing that.
And get jars of jelly.
That's right. They'll give you gifts.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you see how this tool helps? Can you see how this works? All right. Did that help you at all, Amy? Was this helpful? Should we keep going? Do you have any specific questions? Like, are you stuck with this? Like, oh, I'd like to do this, but I don't quite know what to do.
No, I just want to know if I would have time to improve my soil between now and, April-ish, March, when you generally plant, that type of thing, if it's realistic for this year.
Okay, just some gardening advice. I have hands going up. First,
I would say, outside of getting your soil, your problem is going to be ordering canes.
True.
So even if you can't order canes this year, you might have all year to improve that soil.
Yeah.
Or you might have
Positive
gardening
thinking
training
right
where you can cut canes.
right. Exactly, perfect. Thank you. Yes.
So I work in Utah County, and I'm actually a year ahead of her doing the exact same thing that she's doing.
Do you know each other?
No.
You two
But
people make friends.
I am not an expert, but Fawn has helped me. So,
Okay.
I am of the opinion that sometimes when, I know this may be wrong, but I feel like this is a farmer philosophy, that sometimes when you want to do something, you just have to do it. You just have to jump in. So my field that I planted them in had been a horse pasture for 10 years. And so I figured that I didn't, the same, have time to, or the money to add tons of amendments. So I did have the money to buy the canes, and I did have the money to set up my drip system. And I got them in the ground. And the first year, I did the same exact varieties. The first year, I did add some mulch, and they're coming up. And some of them didn't come up, some of them did come up. And this year, I plan to amend, and I plan to amend every year. And I don't know if it's the wrong philosophy, but I just feel like we stall ourselves so much by not just doing something. So, I think you learn as you go.
That's right.
But anyway, it's going, this year I'm trellising and pruning, and, sometimes you have to hope for the best. Because you can have the best soil, the best conditions, and the weather will turn, or whatever,
Yeah, right.
something. And if we don't just do something, I remember somebody said, something is, or I don't even remember how it was, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
That's right. That's right. Just start. Just start.
Well, I think to kind of go along with what Jen was saying is that, like, because people go, oh, I want to grow asparagus, and I'm like, it is so much work for, like, not a lot of stuff. And also, you have to deal with big, tall, ugly, well, some people think this, for a lot of the season. So you got to be really committed to a little bit of asparagus. And also, you're not going to see asparagus for 3 years. You really have to like asparagus. And if you're just like a fad gardener, it's like, oh, I'm, it's the end of the world, so put some things in the ground. And that you have time, because those things have to spend some time getting to a point. So you have time to amend soils with things like where they're cane varieties.
Right, perfect. Yes.
I was going to say the same thing as her. It's like, I'm in St. George, and when we moved into our property, I started working the soil, and I didn't feel like I had enough time. And I was literally pulling blocks of concrete out, and I was like, nothing's going to grow here. But I just kept going, and a few little things grew, and then the next year, it was better, and the next year, it was better. So it's like, you just got to keep going.
That's right.
You just got to get going, and it will improve.
Yeah. Get started. Get going.
Yeah, keep going.
So
Have a
what are the
vision of
best
where you
things
wanna go.
to amend your soil with?
Compost.
Compost. Just, okay, for like, I'm going to say 100%, but I could be wrong. So let's say 99.9999% of plants that we deal with as farmers, they grow, they have a root system that goes in the ground, holds them in there. The feeder roots are very close to the surface. You don't have to like do a lot of deep, heavy plowing to amend soil so much. Put lots of compost on top of the soil. And then the earthworms will come up through, they'll get it, they'll take stuff down. Your feeder roots are pretty close to the top of the soil. Depending on the species, they can be like an inch or two, down to 4 or 5 inches. But you know, you don't have to do a lot of that heavy, deep tillage.
Berries aren't
Okay.
very deep.
I mean, I don't know, how many of you are familiar with like no-till type stuff, trying to get the fungus in the soil and all that? There's a lot of people who are not even like liming fields anymore. It's kind of a new, it's not a new thing, but for a period of time in history, you've got to lime your soils, right? A lot of times. Not so much in the western US, but in the Corn Belt and all that. It's just a standard practice. But if you have the right fungal activity in the soil, the fungus will decompose this rock and make available the fertilizers that are already there. And that's a whole different class than this one. But your work in amending your soils doesn't all have to be muscle. Just get a lot of compost on that soil. And then, you know, get your plants in there. I've seen people with, you know, some soils, they put their plants in and they don't really even till it. They just like dig a trench. And then they put their plants in, and then they put a lot of compost on there, a good finished compost. You don't want anything that's still decomposing with anything like berries or trees, because too much nitrogen can cause problems, especially with fruit trees, get fire blight and all that. But that's, you know, the work isn't always what we think it was. A lot of the gardening books that were published in the last 100 years are sort of going out of style with the way we're starting to understand the sciences and how the soil actually works. So, you know, look up Gabe Brown, look up, who are some of the other greats? This wasn't in my speech today, but trying to solve your problem.
Charles Dowding.
Charles Dowding is one of the great gardeners in England. These people are on YouTube, and you can learn a lot. Start gardening a lot easier, a lot smarter. Just add lots of compost. In my giant greenhouse that I just built, like it has solid rock wall on this side, and that side, and then it's all plastic on this side, and we just have a nice door to walk in. Because all we're going to do is take in a wheelbarrow fulls of compost. We don't need a tractor in there. It's basically a high tunnel, except you can't get a tractor in there because we're not going to till it. It's all by hand. But there's no tilling by hand because we're not going to till. For the next 300 years, it won't be tilled. We tilled it once to start, and we made raised beds, and now we're just adding compost on. Every time we plant, we put a little bit of compost on the bed. No more tilling. Because if you till, you kill the fungus. And if you kill the fungus, you kill the #1 ingredient to make your soil, like for the mineral part of the soil, the rock particles, the sand. With no fungus, then those don't really get released, the elements that the plants use. So.
Who was the other, you said Charles who?
Charles Dowding, D-O-W-D-I-N-G. Yeah. Gabe Brown, there's a bunch of them. Just look up no-till gardening. Okay, is this making sense? I've got 5 minutes left. I just want to make sure that any clarity today. Ask me questions. If you need clarification on any weird thing I said, because I probably said something weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yesterday I got a ton of, a good truckload of really good aged manure.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't smelly at all, and it was really broken down. And I can't seem to get over that where you have to at least turn it in.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, can I spread that out? Just plant my seeds right in that?
It depends what you mean by aged manure, and it depends what species you're putting in there.
It's cow from a really good, from Finney Farm.
Uh-huh.
And, but I just have never, I don't know why, can that burn my seeds, you know?
Yes,
Yeah,
can.
so you.
It's probably a good idea to compost it first.
I mean, it's pretty composted, and if I lay it on now and then let it sit, not that we'll ever get any more snow or rain, but
Yeah, okay.
usually you would get.
Right, so, I mean, yes, you can do it, but where you're asking the question, you probably haven't experimented enough to know if it's going to work out for you.
Yeah.
And that's what you're asking, right?
Yeah.
You could do a quick experiment. Are you planning on planting in the springtime?
Yeah.
Okay, you have months before that. You have a small place in a garage or a basement or a greenhouse
Yeah.
where you can create a growing climate right now. Okay, get some soil
Yeah.
in a pan, a pot, a little grow bed. Put your manure on it just the way you want to. Put your seeds in it. Give it plenty of light and the right temperature so that it'll do its thing.
Right.
And you need airflow. If you're in a closed environment, things will grow that normally don't. Because outside you have wind movement.
Right.
So you need a light
Fan or something.
wind movement, yeah. And just try to recreate an outside environment with temperature, light, air movement. And then you're doing an experiment. And then you can see, oh, those seeds did fantastic. It'll do better outside. Okay. If, oh, yeah, they died and they all came up and they were weird and the leaves turned yellow and they burned and
Yeah.
you need to compost your stuff.
Right.
Okay, so that's where experimenting comes in.
So can you compost it right there on the ground just by turning it a little bit?
Yeah, you
Water,
can. Do you have access to a tiller?
I do. I've just always turned it by hand.
Yeah, well, that's fine, yeah. You can turn it in a little bit. You could just make a pile,
Yeah.
compost it that way, turn it.
You have chickens?
Yeah, I do now,
Do a
yeah.
pile, you let your chickens be around, they'll scratch it out, spread it
Yeah,
out.
put your
you
fence
take it,
around.
move it more, and they'll scratch it, do it again.
Put the chickens to work.
Yeah.
They're great.
Great resource.
Yeah. There's a guy on YouTube who uses chickens all the time to do that. What's his name?
Justin Rose?
No, but he's a good, is that Satin? Josh Satin? Is that a guy? He
Joe
has a beard?
Does it?
But he's a chicken guru, yeah. Well, he's a farmer. He's a market farmer. He's
What's
selling.
his name?
Who?
Josh Satin.
Josh, yeah.
Am I saying the right name? I think that's right.
Is it the Satini that, he's got the big chicken farm?
No. No, he just has a little flock of chickens.
Okay.
He's got like 30 chickens or something.
Yeah.
But he's using them. When he starts a new garden bed the size of this room or whatever, he'll just put his pen around it. When he builds a little greenhouse, he'll stick his chickens in there for 3 weeks,
Right.
put the compost in there, and as the greenhouse starts warming up, and the seeds will start growing, the live larvae will start coming out, the chickens eat all that stuff. They scratch it around, and then all the manure's in there helping. You know, you don't want them leaving them in there so long that you have too much manure, but for 4 or 5 weeks it's not too
Yeah.
much. That's a little tiny space.
Yeah.
Yeah, put the chickens to work, put the cattle to work, put the goats to work. If they're not helping you grow your crops, you're doing something wrong. Don't work for your animals, have your animals work for you. Okay, that's the end. If you have more questions, come see me later. Thank you very much.
Oh, and I'm going to do the same thing on social media. Follow him on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I'm on YouTube. Go
And
just
follow
search
me
William
because I post
DeMille.
about his Wallopeeny. So William DeMille and Bernie DeMille, follow us, and it's cool, good stuff on there.
Yeah.
Have it ready.
Thank you so much.